So, it appears that we have finally made it to the cocktail kitchen. Now, we have all of our ingredients here. It looks like a lot, but it's mostly equipment. Now, if you're listening at home and not watching the video here, then you're just hearing our lovely voices. But remember, you can always investigate our website and find the full video readily available for your viewing pleasure. We're making a daiquiri, and in doing so, we could really use any sort of rum. Traditionally, a white rum would be used, but you could use a golder rum, a spiced rum, a peculiar dark rum. Right now, we are going to be using... What kind of rum are we going to be using, Kevin?
The Mount Gay rum.
The Mount Gay rum. This is the Mount Gay Eclipse rum. It's, I would say, a pretty good darker rum for mixing. It's more of a gold rum than a dark rum. Doesn't actually label itself per color, but it's certainly enjoyable. Now, the thing is that we are not going to be pouring this first, because what we need to do is measure out our sugar and lime juice. Now, generally speaking, in making cocktails, we'll probably use simple syrup, right? Because what are the benefits of simple syrup, Kevin?
Efficiency. You won't have to wait for the sugar to dissolve. It'll already be dissolved.
That's right, because sugar doesn't dissolve in alcohol.
Yes.
It also doesn't dissolve in
Dissolve.
cold temperatures.
Not deserve.
It doesn't deserve cold temperatures because it doesn't dissolve in them.
Yes.
So your sugar needs to be dissolved, so you will make simple syrup beforehand, and in a later episode we'll go through the entire process, a wonderful recipe. But before you can make something with simple syrup, you first need to have simple syrup. If you're making your first cocktail, you might want something a bit simpler, you might not want to go through all of those steps. So in making a daiquiri, you can just dissolve the sugar as you make it. It's not that hard, it just takes a tiny little bit more time. So we have our wonderful antique sugar bowl. Not antique of value, but just antique. As I mentioned before, tablespoons are equal to a ½ ounce. So this recipe is going to call for an ounce of sugar, so that's 2 tablespoons. Dry measures and liquid measures actually convert very easily. 1 tablespoon, and get the little baskets up there, 2 tablespoons. Now you don't necessarily want to be using a tablespoon to measure everything, so you can also use, let's say, a 1 ounce jigger. We talked about jiggers before. You can find them in many different sizes. 1 ounce is pretty standard to measure your lime juice. This is lime juice that you've squeezed, or perhaps reamed or extorted out of a lime husk. But eventually you have it wonderful and fresh and tasty. So all you need to do there is measure out, let's say, 1 ounce. That takes half as long, which is wonderful. Then you have a room temperature juice, because juices, of course, are best extracted from fruits at room temperature, and sugar. All you need to do is stir with a bar spoon for a little bit, and they will wonderfully dissolve into each other. They might not become a perfect liquid, but they'll become as dissolved as you need to get all of that lovely flavor out of them. There might be a little bit of a rough texture at the end, but is that really a bad thing? Perhaps you want not crunch in your daiquiri, but maybe it doesn't have to be the smoothest drink. I mean, it is shaken and all of that. You like daiquiris, don't you, Kevin?
Of course I do.
What is it that you like about them?
They have rum in them.
They have rum in them, and that is the part that we should get to right now.
Yep.
Because just in the time it took Kevin to think of that, we have a mixture that is pretty much our own syrup.
It's also fairly sweet.
Ah, yes it is.
One of the main reasons I'm a fan.
So if we use the Mount Gay rum, that again, with our jigger using the 2 ounce side, very easy to measure. And you don't even need a shaker for this. You could do this in a cup if you wanted to. Like, let's say I wasn't using a shaker, let's say this pint glass was just a glass. This, all I really need to do is add some ice. I might want to use a smaller glass. All I would have to do is add some ice, stir it, and I would be able to drink it and it would be enjoyable. That would be a cocktail. So just using a spoon, some measuring tools, and a cup, and ice, you could make this. But what we are going to be doing is some wonderful shaking. I have separated this beforehand. I want to use a little bit more ice. Adding your ice at the end is actually very useful because then it doesn't melt. You ever had that experience of getting a watery drink?
Yes.
That's just been freshly made?
Yep.
Yeah. If that happens, the ice has probably been sitting out for a while. Make a seal on the Boston shaker if you're using a Boston shaker. If you are using a non-Boston shaker, one that looks more like one with the 3 pieces instead of the pint glass and tin, that's fine too. Just make sure to shake vigorously. And make sure that you have that seal. And that's pretty much our drink. I mean, this is a drink that can be served on the rocks, up in a cocktail glass. It really doesn't require any specialty glassware. What I'm going to be doing is pouring it into a lovely little rocks glass with some ice. One thing that I forgot to get was my strainer. But if you don't have a rocks glass, if you don't have a cocktail glass, if all you have is a pint glass, if all you have is a champagne flute, it's still something that you can drink a daiquiri or really any sour in. And that's really all there is to it. Kevin?
Yay.
I would like you, as you still hold this camera, to try this.
Okay.
We're not going to be garnishing this episode, just because a garnish isn't
That's
really
nice.
necessary. It's nice. How would you
That's
describe
nice.
that flavor?
Citrusy, definitely. Sweet, little tangy. Nice and refreshing, like you said, because of the cool temperature. And very smooth. Very smooth going down. Not much burn. I like that.
Well, I mean, that's one of the wonderful effects of the citrus juice, is that it tempers the burn of the alcohol.
There you go.
So let's go back to the studio.
Yes. Push the button.